Welcome back to the Visually Hidden Selects podcast, episode 49. This month's selection was Boogie Nights from 1997, written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. Second film. Wow. Starring Mark Wahlberg, Burt Reynolds, Julianne Moore, everybody else that I mentioned in the VHS video, plus a whole lot more. This cast just goes on for days. It just keeps unfolding. It's a tapestry of talent in front of the camera in this movie. And the craziest thing is a lot of these actors, a lot of people didn't really know, when this film came out. Like, there are so many people in this movie that were at the beginning of their career or just coming into their own in their career. I mean, Burt Reynolds is probably the biggest name involved in this particular movie. Mark Wahlberg, this is his first starring role, but prior to this, he was really supporting. He had done the Basketball Diaries. He had done a movie called Fear with Reese Witherspoon and William Peterson, and he had a part in Renaissance Man. But prior to that, he was a pop star. He was Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, and that's why, when it gets to the scenes of Dirk singing, it's really funny. But yeah, I can't get over this cast. Like, looking back, like in the moment if you saw it when it came out or around when it came out, it's like, oh yeah, oh cool, yeah, no, he's really good. Oh yeah, but then as time went on and these actors grew and developed professionally, it's like, whoa. And you can see the seed of a lot of it here, like Philip Seymour Hoffman, to go from his role in this movie to Capote winning the Oscar. Like, yeah, of course, looking back, hindsight, but at the time, like, oh yeah, he's, like, who was he? He was just a small character actor. He had been in P.T. Anderson's previous film. He was in My Boyfriend's Back, if you remember that movie from 1993, but he really didn't have like a whole lot behind him. And this film really and I think Magnolia is what really, and The Big Lebowski the same year, 1997. It's a big year, 97. But this one really kind of put him on the map.
Talented Mr. Ripley came out in and around that time frame also.
Yeah.
That kind of boosted him.
Yeah, and John C. Reilly. Julianne Moore, she was kind of like breaking through because she was doing a lot of indies, but she had been in The Fugitive, which her role got cut down drastically in that film, but she was nonetheless on screen with Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones, and Benny and June. William H. Macy had just done Fargo, so he was kind of, but you knew him as like, oh, he's that guy from Fargo. You didn't know he was William H. Macy. He hadn't done Shameless or any of the stuff he became known for later on. Don Cheadle, nobody knew, and now
I forgot he was in this.
He's an Avenger, for crying out loud. I mean, I know him from Moving Violations. He's the drive-through guy in like One Shot in that movie. That's his first movie, starring John Murray, Bill Murray's younger brother. But so Don Cheadle had been around for like 12 years before this movie, and after this movie, he was Don Cheadle. He was out of sight. You know what I mean? Like, he was Ocean's 11. Like, yeah, makes sense because he's super talented, and it really comes through in this movie. Heather Graham, also Licensed to Drive with the Coreys.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now she's Rollergirl, and then from here, they just gave her Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. They saw her in this and was like, there you go.
Yep.
Be in the biggest sequel of, the late 90s. Go ahead. That's for you. So it's just the cast is endless. And then it's again, all these old character actors. Luis Guzman. I mean, Jesus Christ, you know him from Carlito's Way, and again, Out of Sight, and then he just goes on to have this like crazy career where he shows up and you love him. He's almost like a hobbit. You get happy and excited when you see him. It's like, oh, there he is, and now he's Gomez on Wednesday on Netflix.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh man, the cast, Jesus Christ, it's like, it's unreal. It's like unbelievable. And previously we've talked about films like True Romance that also has this incredible ensemble, but a lot of those actors were already who they were. Like, you weren't going to get more Dennis Hopper than you were going to get in 1993. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Christopher Walken was already Christopher Walken. You know, Val Kilmer was already Val Kilmer. Like, Christian Slater, I don't think had ever been better, but he worked his way up to that over like a very impressive career in his teens in the 80s and, you know, early 90s. Like Patricia Arquette, they had all been around for a while. Like, this cast just kind of comes out of nowhere and blindsides you. It's unreal is the only real way I can like describe it.
Yeah, they were like part of that Paul Thomas Anderson crew. You know, that's how I became familiar with most of them, was from this and Magnolia. I was like, oh, it's those guys again. Okay. And then Julianne Moore started popping up in things that I, you know, because I had seen Benny and June, but not enough that like, oh, I remembered her, you know, like that.
Yeah, you're not watching Benny and June really to see her. You're watching it to see Johnny Depp or, you know, Aidan Quinn or, you know, even Oliver Platt. You know, he was like somebody. You know, Julianne Moore, she's the girl. But after, it's like, oh yeah.
The Big Lebowski and then Hannibal and it's like, okay, she's
and Jurassic Park Lost World.
Mm-hmm.
Like this movie was like, it just hit at the right time where it's like, and she was nominated for the Oscar for this role, which deservedly so. I mean, I say it in the video, her performance is kind of unmatched in this particular film. You know, she's just got a lot going on.
The performance of Julianne Moore is wow. I mean, I love the fact that she goes from a femme fatale. I don't know if you say that, but you know this expression, femme fatale. Yeah. She goes from femme fatale to the mother of this crazy family, to the breaking woman because she cannot have she cannot take care of her kids. You know, she has so many layers, and all of them are really perfectly played. I mean, and she's really exceptional in this movie. She doesn't have many scenes when you think about it, but every time she's in a scene, she's perfect. And there is a scene with her that I really love. Is the one when Jack, Rollergirl, Eddie, and her, they're around the table. They're talking. I guess it's Jack talking about the business to Eddie, and you hear him talking, but actually the camera moves on Amber, and you see in her face that she's gonna take care of Eddie like her son. You know what I'm saying? You understand what she feels without any word, just the fact that the camera moves on her. She's not speaking, she's not the one speaking, but everything is on her. I think it's a beautiful scene also. I hope I'm clear in what I'm saying.
Absolutely. She projects this confidence that she doesn't really have in her normal life. Exactly, again, it's like superheroes. It's like, this is like an alter ego, like, you know, Amber Waves, Roller Girl. That's their armor. You know, they could accomplish and do anything. You know,
the mother power that she has.
Yeah, when they're those characters, that they're invincible. You know, bulletproof. And then you get to see how much of a mess she is in her private life. This is one of those movies where, you know, as far as the acting is concerned, since we're talking about that, man, everybody's just right, you know, for the part. There wasn't like, you know, you're watching this and there's like 12 superstars in this and you're like, oh, they were all good except that one guy. No, they're all fucking, like, to a T, play the parts they're supposed to play, and they invoke the emotions that they're supposed to invoke. And it's like a, God bless the casting director, right? On this one. But it's like you said, it's like a tapestry of just some of the most talented people who would dominate the business for at least the next 20 years in most cases. That's an unheard of thing. And then to be, at that point, to be led by Burt Reynolds, who is at that time is the biggest star in that film. And arguably, I mean, I haven't seen all his films, but arguably the greatest performance he's ever given.
If you've seen a lot of Burt Reynolds films, which I've seen a few, you know, and I mentioned this in the VHS as well, like, he's not playing a version of Burt Reynolds. Like, most people have seen Smokey and the Bandit, and he's great, and that movie is great, and it's a classic. But a lot of times he's just playing a version of the Bandit. Let's be real, you know. And here, he's playing an actual character. There's no Burt Reynolds in this movie. It is Jack Horner from start to finish. And usually, like, his films, they have like an action element or a tongue-in-cheek, kind of element to it,
Or
or
Dom
like
DeLuise.
yeah, exactly, like The End, or Hooper, like, and they're not bad movies, but this performance by Burt Reynolds is unbelievable when you think about. And I want you to actually think about this. The movie he made right before this was Striptease, 1996, starring Demi Moore as a down and out mom just trying to get her kid back, so she becomes a stripper. Burt Reynolds is basically playing a caricature, the way we think of a caricature of George W. Bush.
Yeah.
He's basically playing a caricature of George W. Bush before George W. Bush was a caricature to be played. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, this is 1996. And it's, oh man, he's just such a goofball. I think he won the Razzie that year for that role, and prior to that he had done Cop and a Half, so his career was not in
wasn't the best shape,
physical condition,
Yeah.
And to turn down this movie as many times as he did, and then to get the accolades that he did and to turn his back on, it's like, holy shit. I swear to God, he would have taken home the Oscar if he had just endorsed it a little bit, minimal effort. He would have taken home the Oscar for this film, for that role. And you got to wonder, why would an actor who's been in the business as long as he had up to that point, never gotten that kind of, real recognition, and he just walks away?
Maybe it's just a question of ego. No, I don't know. He was a legend of Hollywood, and he's directed by a 26-year-old director. And, maybe he wanted to give a chance to the project. And once he was really in it, he didn't like the fact that he was surrounded by young talents. And I don't know, his ego spoke, I don't know. And maybe that's why afterwards he said, I didn't like my performance. It was a way to be coherent with his attitude during the filming. I don't know.
I think that's a really good point. I think I think it probably was a big ego thing where it's like he's out of control. He doesn't have, it's no longer the Burt Reynolds show.
Yeah.
It's this other thing. It's this ensemble. And even though he's, on fire and killing it, he just, it's not what he wanted or not what he liked. So, I think you might be right, Anne. It was probably big part of his ego.
Or maybe Paul Thomas Anderson wouldn't let him go off script or improvise or do the things that we know, from him, kind of like the way the Coens kind of reined in Nick Cage on Raising Arizona. This is the thing. This is the script. These are the lines. We're doing this and nothing else.
I don't know necessarily that it could be that, because Burt Reynolds, he is a professional. He comes from the old school studio system. So I don't know that he would want to do a whole lot of ad-libbing, but I think the material just wasn't what he would have preferred to do, it was definitely different than everything else in his career, up to that point. He did a movie in the 80s called Sharky's Machine, which is kind of like a Clint Eastwood cop drama. But other than that, he's primarily known for kind of comedies, Even The Longest Yard, the original, has some comedic elements in it from him.
Yeah. All dogs go to heaven.
And Deliverance. If I'm going to do a top 5 Burt Reynolds, it's got to be Boogie Nights, Bandit, Deliverance, The Longest Yard, and you know what? One of his last movies, I think it's called The Last Movie Star. It's a small independent movie.
I wanted to see that. I haven't seen it yet.
It was actually really pretty good, really pretty interesting, and I watched it just after he passed, and it was really kind of resonated as a retrospective kind of look at a career from somebody in his position and point of view. So I would recommend that. But yeah, so Anne, you had never seen this movie before.
No.
And I know I just spent the last, chunk of time talking it up and I'm gonna talk it up even more. So buckle up. But
Here we
I'm
go.
curious, coming into it from the VHS, what were you expecting? Because as I said, I saw this in the theater when I was a kid,
As you do.
as I do, and I was expecting a
Something else.
Saturday Night Fever-ish kind of a
Yeah.
movie. I had no idea that pornography was a part of the story at all, much less, a a borderline John Holmes biopic. So let's see what did this movie bring to you?
Yeah, so I first watched this movie to prepare this podcast, and yeah, I had the same impression with the title before watching it. So yeah, Boogie Nights for me it was a disco movie, but it's not a very famous movie in France. I mean, I asked my coworkers, nobody heard about it, so. Yeah, so I really didn't know what to expect, and that's why when I watched your VHS episode, I was like, okay, so it's not Saturday Night Fever. I got prepared. After when you realize it's gonna be about porn industry, I mean, it's just a setting, I wasn't really disturbed about this.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, so it's okay. It's really easy to watch. But as I told you just before starting this podcast, I had a mixed feeling about this movie. I understand why it's so memorable because it's, the story itself. It's really interesting, and you have many things, many layers in the storytelling. So it's a good movie, but at several points, I felt, and you talked about it in your VHS episode, I felt it was a remake of Goodfellas, technically speaking. Mm-hmm. Really, you have many similarities. So it was a bit disturbing, I felt that way. And about the character's development, I was a bit upset about that, but maybe we'll have the opportunity to talk about it later. But talking about Burt Reynolds, just talking about my first impressions, another theory is coming to my mind. Maybe, because as we just said, when you see Boogie Nights, you expect a nice movie, a movie of the 70s, and people are gonna dance and fall in love, you expect that. So maybe because he was known for mainstream movies,
Mm-hmm.
maybe he didn't assume that his loyal audience could be tricked in a way. You know what I'm saying?
I think that's a part of it too. Yeah, he didn't align or agree with the material, and then it was so far out of his comfort zone professionally that he felt like, oh, I could be like misleading or deceiving my audience that I've been building for the last 30 years.
Yeah, and that's maybe an important point about his behavior.
Yeah, and I when you discuss it and think about it as we're doing it, it falls into place. It makes sense. It adds up, but like when you just think about it as like just the facts, like, oh man, like what the heck, and it's so interesting because every time I watch this movie, which is often and a lot,
without your kids.
Without my kids, no. I'm constantly captivated by his performance specifically. And I think one of the reasons why, and this is going to be a little funny, but growing up, I wanted to be a filmmaker. But, in the 90s, we didn't really have the internet the way we have the internet. We didn't have YouTube. So you couldn't go and like see all these interviews with filmmakers. If you had an opportunity to see a filmmaker interview, it was like on a talk show, or maybe a special feature on a laser disc or a DVD. And so for me, this was one of the first times like I actually got to see like a director in action. Like mm-hmm. Jack Horner is such a big impression and inspiration to me, Peter O'Brien, as a filmmaker. Like in my mind, like that's how a director kind of is. That and Ed Wood, right there, because they are so focused on their film and they have such enthusiasm for the project that they're doing and such a love for what they're doing. And like, it's like, that's what I try to bring into every project and every film. And Steve, you've worked on a few films with me. You could attest to it. Like, I'm all in, you know, not as in as Dirk Diggler goes in, but I'm all in. And a lot of it comes from just the enthusiasm that I picked up from watching Ed Wood and Jack Horner direct these films in these films.
Yeah.
They are probably my two biggest inspirations or influences as a director.
That is weird.
I know. But you think about it, it's like, you know, whenever Jack Horner is directing a scene, you know, and he's talking to Dirk and Heather Graham, Rollergirl, when they're on the waterbed, it's like, try to give me every position, you know, and he's just really, really, involved in the situation that they're about to be in, you know, he's really actually directing them. Or when he's first introducing, you know, Eddie Adams, and, you know, he's like, all right, well, then we'll shoot the rehearsal, you know, like, we'll do that. You know, it's just like constant optimism. And then when camera's rolling, he's focused, he's watching the scene. They got to change magazines. They got to change angles, do it quickly. You know, like he's like so focused on his work. Like, it doesn't matter that two people are fornicating in front of him and one of them is like his, you know, girlfriend. Like, he's focused on his work, on his craft. Even when he's editing with Ricky Jay, you know, it's like, drop that shot of Reed. I want the title to come flying out the screen, you know? And then he's like, this is the film I want to be remembered by, you know? It's like just all those little characteristics of the director, even when he's in his office on New Year's Eve talking to Philip Baker Hall about, like, you know, the future, and the future is videotape, and you're not going to tell me that it's videotape. And how funny is that conversation, you know, now that it takes place 50 years ago, and we're still having those conversations now today with digital and now with AI. It's like the relevancy and the resonation of what's going on here, like professionally, you know, is fantastic. But yeah, Jack Horner is one of my biggest inspiration and influences as a filmmaker.
Hey, listen, when I was a kid, my inspirations for being cool were Sam Malone and the Fonz. Like, I was like, those are the guys I got to be like. Those guys are cool. Yeah, so I get where you're coming from. For on-screen coolness, you didn't get better than those guys. You know, one of the things I love, I mean, I hadn't seen this movie in a really long time. I had seen it a bunch of times, you know, way back when I was in high school and then after high school. But one of the things I really enjoyed about it, watching it this time around, is how committed all the characters are to making these movies as the best that they could possibly be. It's such a charming thing that like we're gonna make this the best porno you've ever seen. Like this, the gusto and the DIY aspect and the passion. Like they think they're creating these epic storylines and these characters. It's so what's the word? It's not heartwarming, but it's just so
endearing.
Yeah, that's it. It's so endearing that they feel that way.
Especially in the scene, you know, with Amber and Dirk in the office, is the first real shot they're gonna make together. And I love the fact that you have Bill saying that to Jack, oh, we didn't see what we wanted to see. Should we do it again? And you're like, okay, they're doing porn, but they really want to have their perfect camera move. And you don't expect that in that kind of industry. You think they're just watching people making love, you know?
And that's the thing. Like, you know, a lot of people don't realize it, or they don't care to think about it, because there's something else going on when you're watching a porno movie, and there's a reason you're watching a porno movie. But it's an industry. It's a profession. Like, these people, they take their work very seriously, and they go through the same, not the same, but they go through a lot of similar type of things that you would in any field or in any kind of filmmaking. You know, it's not like two 20-somethings who met on Tinder going into a motel room with their phone and filming it. You know what I mean? Like, there's a crew and there are people that are like trying to achieve a certain goal, because quality matters. You know, if it looks, what does he say in the movie? If it looks like shit and it sounds like shit, it must be shit. You know, and he's trying to make something good because that's his profession and that's his art form, and you got to respect that.
Yeah, and I think that's the praise we can give to Paul Thomas Anderson about that, because he depicted the porn industry with seriousness and respect, and that's also something you can see similarities with Goodfellas, because it's usually you have this kind of respect for mafia movies, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he did that for porn industry, so you didn't expect that. And I love also the fact that he can balance comedy and tragedy in this atmosphere, but without reducing characters to jokes. It's they make jokes, but it's respectful. I hope I'm clear.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that really comes from you see it throughout the movie in a number of characters, but primarily we're taking this ride with Eddie Adams, with Dirk Diggler, with Mark Wahlberg. And I mentioned this as well in the video, but I mean, originally they wanted Leonardo DiCaprio. Like he was really interested in this movie and this role, but Titanic was a better career move, and he had already committed. So, that's the way the cookie crumbles. But Mark Wahlberg, because it's an ensemble as well, and he's working with such phenomenal actors, it's like, yeah, it's his first leading role. He's still a little wet behind the ears, but he uses it, in the role of Eddie. And then because he's working with such high caliber actors, Burt Reynolds aside, like Julianne Moore, William H. Macy, John C. Reilly, Philip Seymour Hoffman, all these people, Don Cheadle, like he's getting better. You know what I mean? Where it's like, and Steve, you can attest to this as an actor, like when you work with good actors, you get better. They
Sure.
make you better. They bring stuff out of you, and you rise to an occasion because you don't want to let them down.
Yeah, I always say that in any production that I'm in, my dream is to always be the worst one in the whole thing, because I have no place to go but up, and I can learn from other people around me. If you're the best one in the thing you're doing every single time, you're not really growing. So you want to, like you said, go to that next level. I want to see what she's giving me, see what he's giving me. Let me get up there. Let me get there with them and make this thing better.
And if you're the best, you're doing a lot of the heavy lifting, And by this point, Leonardo DiCaprio, he had just done Romeo and Juliet. He had done The Basketball Diaries. Like he had starred in a few films. He had been nominated for What's Eating Gilbert Grape, Critters 3. Or 4, whatever the heck one he was in. But you know what I mean? Like he had been around for a while. Mark Wahlberg was, maybe like 3 years into his acting career.
Yeah, and even now, DiCaprio is still the superior actor. However, aesthetically, Mark Wahlberg was jacked in this movie, and he had that look of that, that
young stud.
The young stud kind of doe-eyed innocence, and like and then with the physique, that's that's it.
DiCaprio, he's built like me. Like he's a wiry dude, especially at that time. Like he was a scrawny, little blonde pretty boy, and I don't think that it would have worked the same way. Like I would not believe that he's packing 13 inches.
Right. So yeah. No wonder there was no room for him on the door in Titanic, but I think that again, you touched on it a little bit. There is a heavy influence from Goodfellas, and and years ago, I mean, I hadn't seen this movie in like 25 years. So like last time I saw this movie, I didn't think about that type of stuff because it's all in the same decade. It all has the same vibe and feel. But going back, there is a massive influence from Goodfellas in this, and but even within that, the one thing I took away, one of the things I took away this time watching it is every character-wise, every character in this movie is very clear cut about who the character is. There's no characters in this where they're just thrown in there. Everyone has like something going on in one way or another, and the through line for me with all of them is they all want to be respected and loved and seen in a certain way. And no matter what they're doing or what their motivations are or what they're trying to accomplish, they all have that in common. And that's
Mm-hmm.
probably why they all gelled so well and worked so well together. Like Don Cheadle in the bank when he's trying to get the loan.
Oh
It's so
yeah.
good. It's such a good scene, and it's such a great performance from him. Like you
Yeah.
feel for the guy. Like, I mean, he's trying to better himself, and he's given this some thought, and he's really taking it seriously. And everybody shits on him about the sound equipment throughout the entire thing.
Yeah. And
And
the
even,
cowboy look.
yeah, and even when Jack loses it, like in the limo, I mean, like when everyone in the show is at their lowest point,
Yeah.
but he wants to be respected. Rollergirl wants to be respected. And
Well,
even
and in the limo as well, like Heather Graham in that scene, like she's being the cute foxy, little roller girl, but then like the guy's like Brandy, right? And you can see,
Mhm.
that's where the performance of Heather Graham really kind of like comes through. That's her moment,
It's
and then
uncomfortable.
as she's going through the scene with the guy where he's practically raping her, like
Yeah.
it's like no, it's not sexy. It's not sexy the way it should be,
Right.
you know.
It's like, she is,
And but then she, Jack's kicking his ass and she's just sitting there like brooding, like boiling over, and then she
Mhm.
finally like goes and has her turn on him, and it's like whoa.
yeah, it's almost like as Roller Girl, she could do anything and nothing hurts her. But then like he penetrated the armor, and
Yeah.
it's just like,
Well,
ooh,
because he's the same guy from the beginning when she's taking the
yeah,
test, who like turns and does the blowjob motion to her, and she gets up and leaves because he just he rents too much space in her head, and then that he comes back around, and it's like he gets his comeuppance in spades.
she gave him the Ralphie from Christmas Story, really fucking packed it in. But no pun intended. But yeah, I just like that about the characters, how they're all desperate in a certain way,
Yeah.
and then there is a dynamic in this thing, because again, when I watched this 25 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever it was, I didn't pick up on all the things, that I'm older, seasoned, I've been around a bit. Yeah, like the danger of weak men, like Dirk, Eddie, his father's weak, and just the mother rules the roost at home. And then William H. Macy, like watching his wife, every
Yeah.
5 seconds with somebody doing something, and he just takes it all in until he explodes and and
Yeah.
kills everybody. I mean, it's just like you got to stand up for yourself, and then you got Jack, who finally has had enough, and so it's like that. And Jack's a strong male character, but because of his desire to be respected in this field, like I'm fucking good at this, man, and people
Yeah.
are going to recognize that I'm good at this, and he just lets loose. It's an interesting thing, because like Don Cheadle, another very soft spoken, kind of gets walked on. People have to
Hmm.
assert themselves and kind of stand up for themselves at some point in time.
Yeah. It's interesting. Buck Swope, the character that Don Cheadle plays, he's the only one you never see in any porno setting
Hmm.
whatsoever. Like he doesn't have any kind of a scene. Reed is on set, and they got some shots of him, in the Brock Landers movie with Becky Barnett, and of course Dirk and Amber and Roller Girl. They all have their moments, but Buck is only like ever like in the background at the party. You never actually see him working, but he suffers such a brunt from
Hmm.
that
Yeah,
lifestyle and association that the others kind of don't necessarily get. It's interesting.
yeah, definitely
Yeah, that's
interesting.
exactly what I wanted to say at the beginning when I said that. For me, the negative point of this movie is the character development. I know you won't agree with me, but let me explain. For me, there are characters, I love them, I love those characters, but they're not useful to the story. And when you have just one character not useful to the story, that's okay. But for me, there are more than one in this film. And even if I love the character of Don Cheadle, for me, without him, the story would be the same. You know what I'm saying? And for me, there's even a useless subplot with the stereo store. Even if I like that scene, I think it's funny to see him with this cowboy costume and everything. We don't need that to understand this character, and we don't even need this character in the story. And that's the same for Scotty for me. For me, Scotty is the same. We don't need this guy. He doesn't do a lot. Okay, there is a touching scene with when he says that he's attracted to Eddie. Okay, it's a touching scenes, but we don't need it. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. I understand what you're saying 100%. I don't disagree. I don't agree either. But let me give you a little bit more information. First of all, more so than Goodfellas, I didn't mention this in the VHS, but more so than Goodfellas, Paul Thomas Anderson is a huge, and I can't overstate that enough, huge Robert Altman fan. And if you've ever seen any of Robert Altman movies, specifically Shortcuts, that movie is also, it's an ensemble cast. It's all these little stories intertwining, and they don't necessarily inflict each other, but they do. They drive each other. There's, stuff going on. It's another like visual tapestry of characters, and that's kind of what he's trying to emulate and achieve here. He goes for broke with that in Magnolia, which is his next movie. We're not going to really delve into Magnolia, but I feel like here with Boogie Nights, it's more acceptable and digestible because the characters do bring a flavor to the story, and it's more about establishing that outcast family element. Like in the very beginning of the movie, Eddie is kind of cast out of his family because his mom is, they're not on the same page, and he just doesn't feel like he belongs, and he feels like he's destined for something better. And so he's kind of driven from home to this new family, and all of these people come from different places and they all have their own baggage. And I think that's really what the movie is more about. It's about this surrogate family of misfits that come together and find each other. And in that regard, Don Cheadle's character is important, and Scotty's character is important. All of these characters, they add up. Becky Barnett's character is important. Jesse is important. They all bring something because they're all, Jesse is another one. Like, she's not really there in the beginning. She comes in when they're doing the awards, and she gives Dirk his award, and then she's in the Brock Landers movie, and you see she's like at his house, like painting the portraits of him, and she's trying to connect with him, and it's just she keeps like missing the moment because she wants something more that Dirk can't give her, because Dirk is the star. He's the star. He's the star. He's the star. He's a big, bright, shining star. But Buck, he can serve that purpose. So then she gravitates towards Buck, and she develops this relationship, and they still stay a part of this family because they're there at the very end, and he's setting up the thing, and she's painting, and the kid is in the pool. It's like, it's not a movie. Paul Thomas Anderson was once asked, "What's this movie about?" And he started to explain it. And then he kind of just gave up, and he was like, "It's about a guy with a big dick." And it's not. It's about all of these people trying to find their place, and they find it in this, place where nobody's really thinking to look.
Yeah, I mean, because Amber Waves, right? She wants to reconnect with her kid, and that doesn't really work out for her the way she would hope. And then, there's Dirk Diggler. He needs a mother, a mother who doesn't reject him. And so they all get what they need from this.
And Rollergirl, when they're snorting coke, and she's like, "Can I call you mom?" It's like, so Jack's the father, Amber's the mother, and they're just all these, little misfits that come together. No pun intended.
The relationship between Mark Wahlberg and John C. Reilly is so good. They're like two little kids at the playground when they first meet. Like, you like spaghetti? I like spaghetti. There's like the conversation. That's like the level of the conversation. It's basically what it is. But it's just so funny, and it's so natural. And John C. Reilly is such a gifted guy. And just he has just an inherent innocence about him always. And it just bleeds through. And the combination of him and Wahlberg together, and they become like instant friends. It's like they get introduced to each other, and then that they're like side by side for the rest of the movie.
But I love the dynamic, and there is like a situation where there is some not necessarily growth, but it's an interesting character dynamic because yeah, Reed is, coming on strong as like the alpha until, Dirk does his first scene and then he realizes like, oh, okay, Dirk is the alpha. Let's, not mince words. If I can just, latch on to this guy, I got a pretty sweet ride, ahead of me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Jesus, Philip Seymour Hoffman couldn't be more awkward and cringeworthy in the best way possible. But like that character, like you feel the palpable awkwardness jumping off the screen. He's got his best what's his name? Eric Stoltz haircut from Mask. He's got that going on. He's just so awkward and so in love, instantly
with like
in
the
love.
short shirt, his belly sticking out.
Right.
I love when he's when they're filming the first scene with Dirk and Amber, and Dirk takes down his pants, and like everybody's just kind of like a little unfazed, and like Scotty's just like breathing heavy, trying to hold the mic up, like he's just like trying to maintain composure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's like it's such a subtle thing, but it's such an impactful performance, And again, he could have been that awkward guy. He could have been typecast as that awkward guy.
Mm-hmm.
He does that so good, but then he just goes on to have this amazing career that, is tragically cut short. And it's just like, shit.
Yeah. The fucking shame. He's so good. Yeah. So many things. But just his awkwardness. I forgot how awkward he was in this movie. I was like, holy shit, this is off the charts. How and just him sitting in the car after he tries to kiss him. And he's just yelling at himself.
Beating himself up. Yeah.
It's like, oh man, it's heartbreaking and very sad,
But I love, and that's the other thing. And with the importance of a character like Scotty, the significance of Scotty, right? He works on the film sometimes, but then he's there on New Year's Eve and he makes his move on Dirk, and you got to think like, what does that do to Dirk? What motivation does that give to Dirk? So there's that relationship, but then later on when Dirk is on the outs and he's has his little blow up on the set there with Johnny Doe, whenever they show Dirk's house and they're waiting for Todd to bring them cocaine, Scotty's always there cleaning up. He's housekeeping. He's like Dirk's housekeeper. Yeah. He becomes like, he's basically his bitch.
He paints the car the same color.
Yeah. He wants to emulate him. He wants to, he admires him, but he like truly loves him so much so that when Dirk is like, he loses his house and he's in that motel at the very end before they go to Alfred Molina's house, he's living in that motel. You see his awards on the back dresser. You see a U-Haul hitched to his Corvette. And Scotty's there. And Scotty, like, why is Scotty there? Because he's cleaning the motel room for him. He's taking care of him. He's, when Amber isn't there, Scotty is. So he serves a different kind of purpose, And he's the one who kind of keeps Dirk on that pedestal, even when Dirk is off the pedestal, when he's like lost the plot and he's fallen, Scotty is the one who like keeps him like lifted up.
Yeah. A lot of moving parts in this, man. A lot of good scenes between these different actors.
I'm going to tell you right now that like when I saw this in the theater, when I was a kid, it got to the scene with Alfred Molina and I was just like, where the fuck is this going? Like and now let me back up a little bit chronologically. I saw Pulp Fiction in the theater when it came out in October of 94. I was in like 6th grade. Okay. And when they went to get the GIMP, I had to go to the bathroom. I didn't have to go to the bathroom, but I had to get the fuck out of that theater because I didn't know what was about to happen, and I wasn't sure I was ready to see it. So that kind of like, briefed me for Boogie Nights a little bit. But when Alfred Molina's there and he's, just smoking from his pipe and Cosmo's flicking firecrackers like randomly, and Reed and Dirk are just like, like shitting in their pants because they don't know what the hell Todd is doing, much less what Alfred Molina is going to do. And he pulls out the gun.
Yeah. What tension though. That's such a great as we said before, he juggles. There's really dramatic stuff in this movie. This hilarious stuff in this movie, but this tension here. Alfred Molina is just dancing in his underwear in his bathrobe.
It's so film.
Yeah, and then the guy's counting the money over there. He's got the gun on him, and the guys are on the couch like sweating, like, oh god, we gotta get the fuck out of here. And then every once in a while, there's a firecracker just fucking going off. That's got to be the most, like alarming thing. Like just tension from all aspects. And then Alfred Molina pulls out a shotgun. Every
single time I hear Jesse's Girl, I go, Ricky Springfield, he's a buddy of mine. And Alfred Molina, again, like this, he was in Raiders of the Lost Ark. We talked about him. He was there in the beginning, with the tarantulas. Like, he's been around a long time. He's a theater guy. Mm-hmm. And here he is in Boogie Nights, playing, Raheed Jackson, coked out of his mind. Who knows what he's smoking in that pipe.
Yeah, I feel like he could be hanging out with Drexel at a bathrobe convention. From True Romance, like they're in their underwear in a bathrobe with shotguns and like drugs and
exactly. All right, and so now and then from here, he Spider-Man 2 and Chocolat and Frida, and he's just like off to the races. And you watch this movie and it's like, who's Alfred Molina? And then you see this movie and it's like, oh dude, that's Alfred Molina. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's just, that alone, if it was only that, but there's so much more that we haven't even touched yet, like the soundtrack. And again, that's where it's kind of like Goodfellas, it's being driven by this soundtrack. It's not so much a score. There's a little score that's used, here and there, but the soundtrack really couldn't be more perfect. I really feel like from the very beginning with, The Best of My Love all the way to the end with Living Thing by ELO, it's like, oh man, it's just, it hits all the right notes and it blends and segues so well. And it carries the story because again, and much like Goodfellas, this movie is only like 2 hours and 25 minutes, start to finish, and for the amount of story you get in that time, wow. And a big part of that is the editing, but another, I think, even bigger part is the cinematography. Robert Elswit shot this film, and he started out as like an effects cameraman on Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi and E.T. He worked for ILM doing special effects camera work. So you think about like, all right, you're one of those guys. You're one of those like, names in the credits. And now you got your own title card on the screen on a beautiful movie with some very elaborate camera work. It's like, I mean, talk about like living the dream. You know what I mean? Like there it is in practice.
Yeah, well, a lot of those camera shots really help the energy of the movie. It doesn't, especially when they're filming some of the porn scenes and whatever, just the way it swings around, it has this vibrance to it.
Sensuality of the camera.
Yeah, but it keeps it going. It's fast paced. Those zooms, those tracking zooms flowing in on everybody. And the whips around, like you said, the opening, because the minute I started watching this movie the other night and I saw that opening shot, I was like, oh my God, this is like when they go into Copacabana in Goodfellas, but it's just a longer version through the street. Take that from Goodfellas and take it up a notch. But I think that helps the move and the feel of those to give it that crazy kind of energy that I would only assume is on those kinds of sets. So yeah, I think that helps the runtime. Because if the camera was just sitting there static all the time and not really moving, oh God, you feel like you're fucking trudging through the mud. But the fact that it swings and it goes with you and does all these different things, I think that really lends itself to that feeling, along with the editing.
And the one time that comes to mind where the camera is just sitting there is in the scene with Alfred Molina, and it's just holding on Mark Wahlberg as he's like staring off into space for like 45 seconds. And, you know, again, like there's a performance going on there, but also, you know, the fact that we've had all this like swinging, flowing, like fluid energy that's just like constantly moving. And then like, you know, we hit the brakes right there. Like that's Dirk like hitting bottom. And, you know, it's like when the Titanic hit the bottom of the ocean, just like the fucking sound it probably made.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we're seeing in that shot. But we're hearing Jesse's girl, you know, we just got to like read his eyes and read his performance. And it's like, wow, like it's so much more impactful because of everything else that had been happening up to that point in the movie. And really after they leave his house, you know, and like Reed disappears into somebody's yard and like Dirk is like crying as he's like speeding away with like his like, you know, windows shot out, you know, like, yeah. I love the scene. It's probably my favorite scene. It's definitely my favorite shot in the whole movie. It's right after that when he goes back and he apologizes to Jack and asks him for help. And then there's that wide shot of them hugging in the kitchen.
Yeah.
That's my favorite shot in the whole movie. Man, like that's the movie in a shot. It's really the relationship between this like broken child and this like surrogate father figure.
Yeah. Well, again, because look at the father that Dirk has.
Yeah.
You know, it's just non-existent, sitting there eating a cereal, you know, at the breakfast table, just nothing going on, no backbone. And then you meet someone like Jack, who's successful, or at least by Dirk's measurement of success, and it seems like he has his shit together. And it's like, well, that's attractive, you know. And hey, I have faith in you, kid. I think you could do a good job. Just to have anybody say anything like that to you in any regard, it's like, fuck, someone believes in me.
Positive reinforcement. It goes a long way. And when you look at when Dirk goes home from work that first night in the beginning of the movie, and the camera does the 360 around his room, and you see the pictures of Bruce Lee, and you see the picture of Serpico, and you see the picture of the Corvette. That's Dirk's American dream. And in the course of the film, you know, he doesn't do Serpico, but he does Brock Landers. You know, he does like the cop porno movie who's like, you know, banging all the hot chicks, and he has the car of his dreams, and he's doing karate, you know. Like, you want to see me kick some ass? I know fucking karate. Like it's just so good on so many levels.
Yeah.
But I love how things like that in the beginning are set up, and they pay off throughout the course of the film as you watch it, you know. And I don't know if you guys paid attention, but even when he's you know, not engaged in a pornographic scene, Mark Wahlberg is packing. If you look at his thigh, he's wearing the appliance.
Yeah, the whole time.
You know, he's got it in the recording studio. He's got it on the dance floor. Like that's. Well,
you can't just leave it home. You know, you gotta.
No, but like that's, you know, it's part of the character, and so it's always there. It's always present. It's not like, oh well, he's got pants on, we're good. You know, we just need that for like that last shot. No.
Yeah, that's sort of the details. That's
yeah.
And what a classic director move there. You know, you don't show the whole monster right at the beginning. You got to make him earn it, and then at the end you see the monster. So you know, hats off to Paul Thomas Anderson, because that was like the most talked about thing was that.
Yeah, throughout the film, I mean, I was wondering if you're gonna see something.
When are we gonna see the monster? Yeah.
Yeah. So here it is.
Well played, Paul Thomas Anderson. But, you know, talking about the last scene and not the obvious part of that, but what I got this viewing was very much like Jake LaMotta in Raging Bull when he's trying to go back out there and do that shitty comedy that he was doing, and that you know, that lounge act he had going on, that pep talk in the mirror, that, like, you know, it's just like there was a nice I guess tip of the cap to Scorsese with that.
Yeah, and so you can see the influence of Scorsese, Raging Bull, Goodfellas, Robert Altman. I mean, if you ever watch a movie called The Player, directed by Robert Altman, the opening shot of that movie is like 8 minutes or something. And throughout the course of it, you're introduced to all of the principal characters, all the actors. The camera is constantly moving because it's like doing a 360 around like a movie studio lot. And during the course of it, characters are walking in and out because they go to the commissary and then they come back and they're still continuing their conversation. And part of their conversation is talking about movies with the longest opening. So it's kind of like a satire, element as well. But that's that influence in P.T. Anderson films, and specifically this one. But I feel like this film is it's different enough where unless you know it, you're not going to see it,
Yeah.
If you're not looking for it, you're not going to find it because, again, the subject matter is very different. I mentioned in the VHS video a couple years earlier, we had Showgirls, and that was a disaster, to put it mildly. This film has such care, such taste, and such finesse behind it that it really just sets it apart from other films of its day, and it makes it timeless. You know what else is crazy? We're further away from the production of this movie than this movie is from the time in which it takes place.
That is
this movie's almost 30 years old, and it takes place like 20 years after it's like starting, like
bananas.
It's insane.
I'll tell you,
time is funny.
Yeah.
There is a character I love a lot, and we haven't talked much about him. It's Bill, Little Bill. I love this character, and I hate the end of him.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that he kind of breaks a stereotype of this industry because I don't know how you say that in English. Libertinism, the fact that you can sleep with every person you want. That's something that the image we have of this industry, and the fact that he suffers from it. He contributes to that kind of work, but he suffers from it with his wife.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful. And he seems to be really touched by it. He still cares about his wife. I understand that way. Or maybe its ego is touched. I don't know. But that's something really beautiful in this character. And the end is so tragic. I don't know. I really love this guy.
Yeah, that's the best way to kind of describe William H. Macy's character, Little Bill. He's beautifully tragic, and I love how, he's the first AD for Jack Horner. He's the one keeping everybody in line and, keeping the production on target. Do we have a script?
And he's really professional. He's really involved in the thing, like it's any kind of filmmaking, but you see he's really involved in his work.
And I love how we get that glimpse into his personal side too. Yeah, professionally he's rock solid, and he's there 100%. But I love that we get those glimpses into his personal life, which is tragic and traumatic, and then it just boils to the surface on New Year's Eve there. And then I love in the end of the movie, when it's the penultimate shot of the movie, when Burt Reynolds is walking through the house and he's, talking to everybody about everything. And it's just this like long, elaborate, again, tracking shot following him. And he walks down the hallway and there's the painting of Little Bill at the end of the hallway. It's just like a nice little echo and a nice little reminder that he's still a part of the family. He's still a part of the story, and he's, not dismissed or forgotten.
Yeah. What's so tragic about him? There's a few things, but for me, it's no matter how hard he would have worked alongside Jack and how great he was at his job, the fact that his wife was doing what she was doing, he felt that disrespect, or that the embarrassment, or so you could be so good in this area of your life, and then you have somebody else who is just making basically a mockery of you in front of all your friends and coworkers, because they were with each other 24/7. So how do you walk away from that, or how do you feel like a man in that sense? Where Jack is, even though Amber's in these movies that he's directing, and it's kind of his woman, he still has a certain level of respect amongst the cast and the crew and whoever. I don't think that Bill felt he had that.
I really do love the whole scene and sequence though when they're recording their demo, when they're in the studio and he's singing the, I don't know if you all know this, but that song, You Got the Touch, that's from the Transformers movie. If you get the soundtrack to that, you can listen to the actual studio version of that, and they just, I guess, licensed it and appropriated it for Dirk Diggler's demo. And he's singing off key, which again is just really funny coming from, Marky Mark, the pop singer.
How appropriate, more than meets the eye, right?
Yeah. The brother of Donnie Wahlberg from New Kids on the Block. Like, of course he can sing, but Dirk Diggler can't really sing, but he wants to sing, so he's going to try to sing. And again, it's that whole idea of chasing your dream, But I love when they're in the studio and Reed is just like his total lackey.
Yeah.
Just his yes man to the very, very end, so much so that he's like dancing and grooving in the booth. But when they're writing that song, he will rock you. Like, it's just so like, and it's not a bad song. but it's so endearing. Like, again, it's endearing how these two like strapping built porn stars are like little kids in their bedroom trying to like write rock and roll songs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Trying to reinvent themselves as other characters are doing at that point in the movie. But I love when they're fighting with the studio owner. I don't know if you guys know who that is. The studio owner is actually Robert Downey Sr.
Oh.
Robert Downey Jr.'s father is the head of the studio that will not release the tapes. And I just love how cool he plays it and how uncool Reed and Dirk are at that point. And again, Scotty's just cowering in the background, like so fearful. Like, is Dirk going to get hit in the face? I don't know. I hope not.
Yeah.
And he's just like watching this. But I often say, that's a YP, not an MP. Your problem. That's a big quote takeaway from me in my life from this film.
Yeah, I love the optimism they have when they're in the booth trying to write that song. Like, it never occurred to them that it's not going to work or that this music is going to fail. Like, it's going to work. Like, and that is,
they're sure of them.
That's such an appealing quality for those two characters. Like, of course this is going to work. Everything we do work. Like,
have you even heard the tapes? Have you even heard them? We're guaranteed a record deal. Our stuff is that good.
Yeah. And it's not. But yeah, it's so funny.
Yeah.
But what a confidence to have in life. That's so good. Have Dirk Diggler confidence. That's what we need. I do love them putting that movie together. When he plays Landers, I think those clips are fucking hilarious. But I think if I had to pick a favorite, it sounds so weird saying favorite in this context, but favorite scene, I think, is the downfall of everybody, that section, like especially the Rollergirl Jack thing when Burt gets out of that fucking limo. All bets are off, man.
Yeah.
I mean, he just gives him, he just fucking goes. So you don't even give a shit anymore. You're like someone who's really, for the most part, kept composure. He gets a little pissy on New Year's Eve when they tell him, VHS is going to be the new crazy thing. He's like, fuck, you don't tell me. And then when he gets into it with Dirk, but even when Dirk's being a complete asshole, he still has a calm about him until he puts his hands on him. And then shit takes this to another level. But this guy, Jack, just fucking had enough. And I was like, I think that might be my favorite scene.
Well, that whole sequence, that like end of the, second act when everybody just hits bottom. Yeah, it's really good because, up to that point, everybody's like flying high, they got rave reviews. People are lining up outside the theater. Like, Dirk is buying a house and his dream car and, his entire wardrobe, organized by color as well as designer, and that shot's right out of Goodfellas with Henry's closet and Karen's closet. So, it's, and then just when he goes off the rails, who doesn't love a train wreck?
Yeah.
And this is a spectacular train wreck, but I love the reconciliation of it at the end and how like there's, there's a sense of hope at the end. So
They were better together,
yeah,
all of them.
yeah. Well, and I in addition to the scenes already mentioned, I love the scene when they have their blow up. I feel like Mark Wahlberg is really like on fire and holding his own when he's like flipping out at everyone. You're not my mom. You're not my fucking mom. Fuck you. Fuck all of you. Like he's just so into it.
Yeah.
Like he's carrying that scene, but when you watch that scene and you look at everybody else watching him, and Amber's like, Scotty's terrified. He's like holding himself in fear.
And Reed apologizing to Jack. I'll fix it.
Yeah. and you just look at everybody like watching Dirk explode when they show the reverse and everybody's holding Jack Horner back. It's like, wow, like talking about like coming together, like, again, no pun intended, but wow.
Yeah, but like you said, that ending is a hopeful ending for the characters and for the audience. You feel a little hopeful for these people that you spent 2 hours with. But yeah, it's like when a band breaks up and they go through a hard time and they get back together, do the reunion tour. This feels like they got the band back together and they're better off with each other in each other's lives, basically.
The donut store with Don Cheadle, when everybody dies and he's like, what I'm gonna do with the money, and we know what he did, but I love this scene.
That was a very Tarantino scene.
I agree.
The level of tension and the level of misfortune and the level of violence that happens
and absurdity. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, you could totally see that being in a Tarantino film. Yeah. But I think the way it's set up and the point at which it comes, because at that point Dirk has been beaten by the rednecks in the pickup trucks. Rollergirl and Jack have just pummeled that, frat boy. Previously, right before that, Amber has lost her custody hearing. So everybody's down and out.
Yeah.
And then like right after that, Dirk and Reed go into the belly of the beast with Alfred Molina, and like they achieve bottom.
Yeah.
So it's like just that point where it's like, oh shit, but there's that glimmer of hope, because again, he's dressed in all white, like he's dressed to the nines in like a white tuxedo. Like he looks like he's like going to host, the Oscars or something.
Yeah.
And then, we've already seen him lose at the bank. So now to like get this kind of like weird, fate, misfortune in his favor, like silver lining, like, okay, maybe not all is bad or wrong in the universe.
And you really don't expect that because you know that this character is really unlucky from the beginning and his wife is pregnant, so you imagine the worst happening. But
you think he's going to get shot.
Yeah, sure. And actually is the one surviving, so
yeah. So it's actually really good misdirection there. Yeah. All right, so one time I asked my wife, if you could switch places or have the life of any character from any film ever, who would it be and what film? So basically, like, you would have lived their life up to the end credits and then you just take over, but you have all their experiences prior and throughout the film. And so I asked my wife this question, and she thought about it for a second, and she said she would want to be Sean Connery from Medicine Man.
Okay.
Curing cancer in the rainforest. My answer was Dirk Diggler.
Oh my God.
The bigger question is, what was her response to that tidbit of information?
Oh, you can imagine.
You were already married or not?
Oh yeah, this was a couple of months ago.
Oh.
Okay.
I thought of this question. And then I dropped that on her, and she was like, "Yeah, that tracks."
Oh my God.
That will about do it for us here today at the Visually Hidden Selects podcast. We will be discussing a completely different film next month, so make sure you head over to our YouTube channel and subscribe so you don't miss any future selections. You can catch Steve and Bendler over at Steve's Pop Culture Corner on Instagram. Ann and I, of course, are also on Instagram as well as Letterboxd, so you can follow us over there and find out what we've been watching and see what we think. And until next time, just keep rocking and rolling, man.